The things we feed our bodies and minds can easily go unnoticed, because they're often just means to an end. That end for me was unclear, and each day I kept pushing on until I became overwhelmed by my ambitions and imaginary needs that I had created for myself. Before I'd realized, commitments piled up until I wouldn't have room to breathe, so I chose to hold my breath and keep my head down. At the end of the day, I would usually let go of all my worries and retreat into comfort and denial of the things that I had left undone. The next day I would wake up, rinse myself clean, and do it all over again, each day forgetting the reason why I had drifted into unconsciousness before. Eventually the distractions became the focus of my day, and I lost sight of the things that truly mattered to me. There was one who cared enough about me to hang on, even when I was ready to move along the busy road. I couldn't have known how blessed I was when she sat down next to me that first day of class over a year ago. How was I to know that she would be the one to challenge my assumptions and beliefs so deeply that one day I would look back and feel like a whole new person? It's strange to think that a time bomb had been ticking within her the entire time that we had been together. Thinking of my preoccupation with my petty worries made me ashamed of everything that I had thought I had known. I was lost in a world of responsibilities that I had created for myself. One day, in the early spring, I was rubbing her neck when I found a curious lump on her shoulder. It was the size of a ping-pong ball, and it moved around as I played with it under her skin. She had never noticed it, and we joked that it was probably cancer. As sure as I was that it was probably some kind of knot, I still thought she should get it checked out. Weeks later, she got a call from her mother. The family doctor wanted to meet as soon as possible. She told me about this, and although I was busy, I decided to go down with her. The doctor came out to meet us in the waiting room at around 7 o'clock. He had stayed late because he wanted to talk to us that day. He looked at us with a sadness that penetrated his professionalism. Before him sat the girl that he had taken care of for her entire life. We sat there in a submissive silence that begged for answers. As we listened to the doctor, who was obviously choosing his words very carefully, my hand met hers and I stroked her arm to give me something to do. When an unthinkable word came out of the doctor's mouth, my mind went still. Cancer. I stared off into the distance in shock and disbelief. My stomach twisted as if it sensed that our worlds were about to be turned upside down. I felt like I was watching myself from above, totally disconnected from my body, holding her hand and staring off into that wall. We left that building in a sense of fading hope that this could all be a mistake. We tried everything to rationalize the situation, thanking our luck that the prognosis was good and that we caught it early. The doctor told us Hodgkin's lymphoma was one of the most treatable forms of cancer. All we could do now was wait and pray. When she began her chemotherapy, I just wanted to drop everything and stay with her, but bills and rent kept me working up at school. Days would pass with boring mediocrity, and it aided me to know that I could have been by her side the whole time had the circumstances been different. 2 hours away seemed like a lifetime. Disappointment and longing shadowed everything I did. Knowing that I could have been down there, instead I was dwindling the days away, powerless to change her. We talked at nights to pass the lonely hours apart from each other. She told me how she felt like just a shell of her former self, collapsing beneath the pressure of the drugs, distance, and the hopeless loneliness that she felt. Looking forward to the smallest things every day seemed to keep her hope alive. A phone call, an online conversation, a small gift, anything to pass the time. Eventually the week would be over, and we would be in each other's arms again. Everyone involved was being stretched to their limits. The distance was putting a lot of stress on both of our families, carting me back and forth from my apartment at school to her home, 2 hours away. I tried to fill my life with distractions, but at the end of the day, there was no hiding from the fact that we were both alone, connected only by our experience, love, and electronic signals beaming down from satellites flying indefinitely around us. That summer featured blood tests, doctor's checkups, medical jargon, measurements. They put a little port in her chest to pump a myriad of deadly poisons through her body every week. I tried to make it down to her chemo sessions when I could, but it never felt like it was good enough. At first she took a lot longer than was expected to lose her hair, and we hoped that it might not fall out at all. Then the reality checked in, and our naive hopes began to thin out with every passing day. The chemo took its greatest toll when she began waking up in the mornings to an ever-increasing amount of hair on her pillow. She would cry on the phone and sit in bed alone all day, with her dying hair follicles to remind her of what she was losing. She felt like just a shadow of the image that she created for herself, and as much as I would insist that she would always be beautiful, she refused to see it. Her former beauty was transforming into something deeper with every lost follicle, and despite our distance, we grew closer than normal life could have ever brought us. She decided to shave her head because she couldn't stand the slow, painful decay into what she thought was ugliness. I could never see her as anything less than a savior to me, and I let her know it whenever she was on the verge of tears. Holding her little bald head to my chest and cuddling the nights away was like therapy for both of us. Without those precious moments, I don't know how we could have made it through. Her soft fingers caressed me with love, even though her sensations were numbed by the chemo. Weeks melted away into months, and it looked like the worst was over. The tumors in her chest were shrinking, and after what seemed like an eternity, we saw the end of her chemotherapy. We celebrated because we thought the worst was over. Overall, she responded well to the chemo, and 5 weeks of radiation therapy seemed like it would be a breeze. At this point, school was back in session, and her radiation sessions were scheduled for weekdays, so it became even more difficult for me to come down and see her. After she had her first radiation session, she called me, and I could tell immediately that something wasn't right. Her tone conveyed a fear that I had never seen in her before, and she told me how they put a full mask on her and bolted it down to the table so she couldn't move as she was being bombarded with the invisible rays. She could taste the radiation in her mouth as the giant machine encircled her, radiating her from the front and back. She told me she had a panic attack while on the mask, and she didn't want to go back the next day. I skipped class and got a ride down as soon as I could to be with her for her next session. I saw the intimidating mask for myself. I saw the kindness of the doctors that rushed in to take her mask off as soon as it was safe to enter the room again. I made it down a couple more times to radiation, and she got used to it after a while. The memory of her voice on the phone will stay with me forever, though, and I hope to God she never has to go through anything like this again. When our anniversary rolled around, I knew what I felt compelled to do. I used to think of my hair as something that defined who I was, and watching hers grow back more and more every day makes me realize how petty and insecure I was. The last of the lonely weeks passed, and now we are together again for good. Every day her little head becomes more shaded, the fuzzy black hair is reaching out into the air. With it comes a continual rebirth of hope. Her hair is softer and healthier than it has ever been, free of the bleach that masked its true color. Each new day brings this feeling of renewed hope as her symptoms fade. Her little fingers begin to regain the sensitivity that was robbed by the chemo. Her hair has grown long enough to make her feel comfortable going out in public without her bandana. Looking back and recalling this journey makes it seem like one big and horrible dream, but now we can awake and go on with our lives and our love. After so many years of skepticism, I now realize what it means to go to bed at night and have someone who loves you no matter what, someone who cares about all your strengths and especially your shortcomings, and someone that you trust enough to share your struggles with. I've never been so moved by anyone in my life. During her lowest times, I would tell her to list the things she does have and focus on those blessings. Now I think we both understand what this means more than ever. Yet I still find myself asking where I'm about to go. The same questions and ambitions persist, but now they have a new foundation. This time I know that our summer journey into the mind and heart will buffer me from the grief that may inevitably find me. You really can't fully appreciate what you have until it's about to be taken away, and you're powerless to change it. Nothing can prepare you for that moment when you step through the door and realize nothing will ever be the same. It could always be worse, and even though my sacrifice is small compared to what many go through, I've taken a valuable lesson from all this. I now believe that who you are is not truly defined until some disruption forces you to rethink your existence. Now we both have something to look back on when we're feeling like life is out to get us.